you can draw this in Procreate. During this easy Procreate drawing tutorial, I will guide you through the steps of creating this summer mountain scene. No worries, you don't need any experience with drawing or with the Procreate app. We'll start off by laying down the big elements with flat colors, and then we'll start adding more details and color effects. And during that process, you will learn about the features in Procreate, like layer clipping mask and layer blending modes. So you will be learning by doing. And once you have reached the end of this Procreate tutorial, I'm sure you will be very proud of yourself and you will just want to share your results. If you are sharing that on Instagram, then do be sure to tag me in the image, not just in the description, because that way I will be able to find your work and maybe we will see it in the next video. Just like these fantastic results from my friends at Patreon. That's the place you need to go if your Procreate tutorial addiction is starting to take serious forms, because there you will find more than 100 Procreate tutorials ranging from beginner levels to more advanced levels. For this tutorial, we are working on a canvas that is 4000 by 3000 pixels, which is relatively big. So if you tend to run out of layers quickly, then I would suggest making your canvas a little bit smaller. I have also created a color palette in case you want to use the exact same colors as I'm using. You can find it linked in the description and it's totally free, of course. Now let's get started. Grab your pencil or your finger or whatever you are going to use to draw, and let's get started by grabbing a color from our color palette, the first color in the first row, and we will drag it onto our canvas. Just drag the little circle onto your canvas to fill everything. Then we will create a new layer on top of this layer. Go to the layer menu, you can see our bluish layer. We'll tap the plus for a new layer on top of that. And then for our color, we are going to use this one over here. That's the 8th color in the 3rd row. And we are going to use it for our little path that will be in our illustration. And for the brush, you need to go to the calligraphy brushes and then use the script brush all the way at the bottom here. Now make sure that the opacity of your brush is at 100%, otherwise your brush will be transparent. And for the size, I have it set to 10%. And I will just make a line which doesn't have to be perfectly straight, from about here all the way to the right side, like this. Make sure that the sides touch, and then you can drag in the color right underneath here to fill that area. Now we'll make a new layer on top of this one, so we'll go to the layer menu, the 2 little squares, and then we'll tap the plus for a new layer. And then for our color, we'll go to this one over here, the 10th color in the 2nd row. And now we are going to create our grassy plains. We'll start a little bit left from the center here. And then we'll make a bit of a wobbly line like this going up to about here. And then drag in a color to fill that area. Then we'll make another one. We'll start here in the corner. And this will be our path to about here. And then we'll go back left, go up a little bit like this, and then drag in the color to fill this area as well. Next, we are going to add our big mountains, and they will be in the background. They will be behind these grassy plains. So that layer for that mountain needs to be underneath the grass and the path. So first, tap layer 1 with our sky, then tap the plus for a new layer. And then for our color, we'll grab this 3rd color in the 1st row. And then let's first start about here. Make a bit of a wobbly line going up all the way here. And then back down like this. And then we'll make another part of the mountain which is a little bit lower. On the left side, we'll go up like this. And then down on this side. And then let's loop to this area so that we're sure that the shape is closed. So we can drag in the color here. Now this shape isn't closed yet, so let's go down to the bottom of our canvas so we're sure that this shape is closed as well. So we can drag in the color. Then let's make a new layer on top of this one. Let's tap the plus. And then for the color, we are going to use this one over here, 1st color in the 3rd row. And we'll use this for, well, it's a bit like a mountain or rocky part here on the left side. We'll start about here, then go down, slightly diagonal, like this. Now loop to the left to close your shape, and then drag in the color. Now we have our major elements. You can definitely still adjust these. You can use the eraser by tapping and holding it. It'll switch to the script brush as well. And then you can cut off parts of your mountain or of the rock, whatever. Move your objects around until you are pleased with how they look. I'm already pleased, so let's start drawing some more rocks. We will do that on a layer that is on top of our grass layer. So first go to this layer, then tap the plus. And then for our color, we'll grab this one over here. That's the 6th color in the 3rd row. And first, let's add some rocks over here. So just a shape like this. Then you can drag in the color to fill it. And now let's make another one right next to it. So just something like this. Then drag in the color to fill it. And let's make one over here as well. Drag in the color. Then we'll make some more rocks in front of these. So we'll go to the layer menu first and tap the plus for a new layer. And then for the color, we'll grab this next one. That's the 7th color in the 1st row. Let's make one in front of this big rock, for instance. Something like this. Drag in the color. And maybe a smaller one over here. Drag in the color. I also would like to add a rock over here. Drag in the color. And then let's add another one on a new layer again. Let's go to the layer menu, tap the plus. And on this layer, I would like to make a big rock here in the corner. Start here. Just create something like this. And then drag in the color. Next, let's add some trees. We'll do that on a layer underneath our grass layer. It'll be behind the grass. So let's go to this layer, layer 5, and then tap the plus. And then for our color, let's first grab this one. That's the 7th color in the 2nd row. And we'll use it for a big tree over here. Let's move the canvas a little bit. Let's first make a line like this. So it'll be about this height. And then we can zoom in even more. Then we'll make these pointy shapes as we move down. Just a little bit random. Then on this side as well. Then make sure you close the shape and then drag in the color. Now, if you want the tips to be a little bit more pointy, then you can just grab the eraser and then go along that pointy part and make it a bit more crisp. Now let's make another tree underneath this one. So let's go to layer 5 again, then tap the plus, and then for the color, we will grab this one over here. That's the 6th color in the 2nd row. Let's grab our brush again, the script brush. And then let's make another tree, which is quite a bit lower, about half. Let's make a line like this. And then let's make these pointy shapes again. Pretty random, like this. Close the shape and drag in the color. You can also use continue filling at the top and tap this area to fill everything. Now I think we could actually move it a little bit to the right, a little bit closer to the other tree. So let's go to the move and transform tool. That's the little arrow. And then let's just drag it a little bit to the right. Maybe a little bit upward here. Place it about here. Then we'll make another tree right behind this one. So let's go to the layer menu, then tap layer 5 again, and tap the plus. And then for the color, we will grab this one over here. That's the 5th color in the 2nd row. And again, let's first make a line a little bit lower than the other one, and then make those pointy shapes again. Doesn't have to be perfect. It can be a little bit playful. Then drag in the color. And there you have another nice looking tree. Let's make some more trees right here in this center area. And for those, I would like to use a different color. We'll use this one over here, the 4th color in the 2nd row. And let's just make a few very basic cone shapes right here. At the end of the path, these are very far away, and they are just these rounded cone shapes. You can make some a little bit bigger. Just a few like this. Then over here, let's make some more. Maybe these do have these pointy shapes, but they're still very basic. And maybe one over here. You can either color them in by hand or drag in the color, whatever you prefer. I'll just color them in by hand. So we have a nice set of trees here. Let's make a few trees on this side as well. For those, I want to use this color over here, which is the 8th color in the 2nd row. And let's, for instance, make one over here with some simple pointy shapes. These are stylized trees. Drag in the color. And let's also make a few over here. Vary the sizes a little bit to add some variation. And one over here. Make sure the shapes are closed when you drag in the color. You use continue filling. And fill all these parts. Make sure that you don't see any little gaps. Well, there was a gap probably behind somewhere. Let's grab the brush and just color this in by hand. You can make some a little bit more pointy. You can use the eraser, of course. And just go along the edges if you want to adjust them a little bit. And then I want to make another type of bush right in front of this one. Let's go to that layer that is on top of this one, layer 10. And then for the color, we'll grab this 9th color in the 2nd row. And let's make another type of bush here. Just again, a simple shape. But these pointy parts are moving upward. Now let's drag in a color. I hope you can see it properly. Let me go to the layer. I'll tap and hold it here so you can see the individual shape. It's a bit like a blobby flame. Let me tap and hold this again so everything is turned on. And now let's make our road sign. Let's do that on a layer on top of the other. So move to the top layer, then tap the plus. And then for our color, let's start with this one, the 1st color in the 3rd row. And we'll use that to make like a pole. Let's start here, move upward to about here, make a bit of a rounded shape and move back down. Then drag in the color to fill it. Feel like it might be a little bit higher. Let's add a little part. No worries if you need to adjust it. And of course, you can also use the eraser again if you need to carve it a little bit. It's nice if it's a little bit wonky, a little bit wobbly. And then let's add the signs. Let's create a new layer, go to the layer menu, tap the plus, and then for the color, we will use this one over here, the 9th color in the 3rd row. And let's zoom in a little bit, and now let's first make a sign over here. Diagonal line like this, pointy part here, and a line in this direction, and then close that shape. Then another one over here, in this direction, pointy part, close the shape, and let's drag in the color, and then one over here, pointy part here, close the shape here, drag in the color, maybe it can be a little bit bigger. Then we can use the eraser and we can make everything a little bit more pointy, make those edges a little bit more crisp. Make those signs nice and pointy. And maybe we can make that pull a little bit thinner. We can do that by going to the layer 12 here, and then use the eraser to cut off a part. Or you could also use the Move and Transform tool to make it a little bit thinner. Just make sure that you don't have any floating brown parts anywhere. I think something like this should be fine. We can always adjust it even more later on. I do feel like this sign is a little bit too rounded. So let's go back to layer 13. We grab the eraser. And let's go along this line, make it a little bit less wonky. All right, now we have all the elements. Let's get started with adding more details to everything. And let's get started with the mountains. Let's go to that layer, that's layer 4 over here. Then we'll make a new layer on top of that by tapping the plus. And since we don't want any of our paint to show up outside of the mountain, we are going to set this layer to clipping mask. You can tap it and turn on clipping mask. And now whatever we do here, it'll only show up on that mountain shape. Then we'll tap the N to change our layer blending mode. We will scroll up to multiply. That will make everything a little bit darker. Then for our color, we will grab this color over here, first color in the 2nd row. And for the brush, we will stick with the script brush. And then what we'll do is we'll start at the tip here and make a bit of a wobbly, wavy line in this direction. Then loop around, then we'll go back up to right where these mountains connect. Then close the shaper at the top and drag in the color. So now we have a shadow on the left side of the mountain. Then we'll do the same for this one. We'll start at the top, make a bit of a wavy line like this, loop around, close the shape, and drag in the color. Now let's make the grassy part of our mountain. We'll make a new layer underneath this one. So first we'll tap layer 4, then we'll tap the plus, and then for our color, we'll start with this one, the 5th color in the 1st row. Then we'll make a shape. We'll start about here, make a wobbly line going upward here, then back down and back up, all the way to the right, loop around, and then close the shape, and then drag in the color to fill it. I think we can actually go a little bit higher even here. Let's attach a little part and then drag in the color there. Then we'll make a new layer on top of this one. So we'll tap the plus, and then for the color, we'll grab the next one, which is the 6th color in the 1st row. And then let's create some lighter shapes. Let's go over here, make a light part like this. Let's go up here and back down here. We're just going to make some color variation here. Let's drag in a color. Maybe also a little bit of that light over here. Loop around, drag in a color. And then we can actually merge these two layers to save some layer space. So let's pinch them together. Make sure that you only pinch these two together. And then make a new layer on top again by tapping the plus. Then we'll move on to the next color, which is the 7th color in the first row for even lighter parts. Let's make a blob over here. Maybe some here. Some light shapes. And then let's drag in the color. And before we continue, I feel like everything over here could be a little bit lower. Now we're working digitally, so we can always fix things, which is great. Let's go to that path layer. That's layer 2 over here. Then we'll grab our eraser. Let's make this a little bit lower. Make sure that you don't get any floating light parts. So a bit like this. Then we'll move to that grass layer, which is layer 3. Grab the eraser again. And let's make this a little bit lower as well. Let's zoom in a little bit so we don't miss any parts. We don't want any grass floating around. Now we do have some floating trees, so we need to fix that. But that's no problem. Let's just go to that layer on which the trees are. Where do we have it? That's right over here, layer 11. Now we don't want all the trees to move, just the trees that are over here. So let's go to the selection tool, the S shib ribbon, then set it to freehand and make sure that color fill is turned off. Then loop around here, close it. Then we need to go to the move and transform tool, the little arrow. And then we can simply drag these down like this. And then tap the arrow to get out of here. Now let's continue with our mountain. Let's go back to the layer. We can pinch these two together, so 15 and 16. Pinch those. Then tap this layer, tap the plus for a new layer on top. And then for the color, we will use this one over here, the 8th color in the first row. And then we'll make another shape. We'll start here. And we'll wobble our way to the right. Loop around to make sure that the shape is closed and then drag in the color. And we'll lower the opacity of this layer a little bit. We'll go to the layer menu, tap the N, and then you see the slider. You can slide it to the left to 50%. Then we'll tap the plus for another layer. And then we'll make another wobbly line. Just wobble your way to the right for some nice color variation on our mountain. Loop around to make sure that the shape is closed and then drag in the color. Now we have some nice color variation here. We can actually merge these grass layers, pinch them together. And now let's start and create some snow. Let's tap the plus for a new layer again. And then for the color, we'll use this one over here, 4th color in the first row. And let's start about here. Let's create some random snow shapes. Some pointy parts here. Just like this, move up, add some random shapes. Loop around. We'll add some snow on this side. Random shapes. And then drag in the color. And then just continue adding these random shapes, pointy parts. Drag in the color once you have a closed shape. I'll make a bit of an L shape here. And with this brush, the harder you press, the thicker your line will become. So keep that in mind. Let's make a nice random shape over here. We'll also go over the grass. Make a big shape over here. And some smaller shapes in some areas. Maybe a little bit of snow right here in the veil. And a big shape on this part of the mountain. And just add some of these pointy parts. And then on this one, let's make a shape following that ridge. And over here, we need to go along the other mountain. Let's zoom in a little bit. I don't want to go over that dark area, so we can just grab the eraser and tidy that up a little bit. Then grab the brush again, make sure you loop around and drag in the color. Let's make another shape over here. Your shapes really don't have to look exactly the same as mine, of course. Just use your imagination. Now let's continue adding some smaller little dabs, smaller parts of snow. Just some little wiggles, and some lines. And vary the pressure of your brush. I think this is looking pretty good. Maybe another one over here. And now let's make this look even better. We are going to add a layer mask to this layer. We'll tap the layer and then tap mask. Now there's a layer mask attached, and while using black, we can remove parts of our snow. You could also do this with an eraser, of course, but using a layer mask is non-destructive. So if you have erased a bit too much, then you can just switch to white and then paint it back in. So a layer mask is like erasing without really erasing. It's non-destructive. Well, let's remove little parts and get parts of that rock back. Just some random shapes again, just like with the snow. Especially over here near the veil, it's already melting. So there are a lot of these holes. just in random spots, make various sizes and open up that snow. Let's open this a little bit. There's a bit more snow over there because it's the part that's in the shade and the part that's in the light, like over here. There, the snow is a bit more melted. Make a big shape over here. Perhaps a little bit here. I think this looks good. Next, we'll use some layer blending mode tricks. We'll go back to that multiply layer, which created that shadow, and we are going to add some color variety there. First, tap the layer and then tap alpha lock. So now we can only paint on this shape that we have already created here. And for our brush, we will go to the airbrushing brushes and use the soft brush. And for the color, we'll use this blue color, second color in the second row. And we are going to use that to cool our shadow a little bit. And the opacity of our brush is at 60%. And let's set the size to 25%. And then let's go over the lower area of the shadow to cool that a little bit. Just like this. Next, I would also like to soften the shadow a little bit here, making it a little bit lighter here in this area. We can do that by making use of a layer mask, just like we did with the snow, but this time we will use the soft brush. So first tap the layer, then use mask. And now while it's set to black, we can go over this area to gently soften it, just a little bit. Next, we are going to warm our mountains a little bit. Make them look even better. We'll make a new layer on top of this one, so tap the plus. And this time, we'll set the layer blending mode to overlay. Scroll down to overlay. This is a great layer blending mode to add color variation to warm up tones or to cool down tones. In this case, we are going to warm them up. We'll grab that third color in the second row. And with our brush, we'll go over that right side of our mountain, but we don't want our brush or our paint to show up on the sky. So do make sure to go to the layer, tap it, and use clipping mask. Then let's gently go over that right side, making rounded motions, and you can see how it nicely warms up. I also want to do that for this area, but I don't want that warm color to show up on that left side of the big mountain too much. So let's go and grab the selection tool, the S shape ribbon. And then let's make a selection like this. Follow that edge of the mountain. Then loop around, close it. Let's zoom out a little bit, grab the brush, and go over that area to warm that up a little bit. And then tap the S shape ribbon to get out of there. Now that we have finished our mountains, let's continue working on the rocks and the trees. Let's start with this rock. Let's go to its layer, layer 5 over here. Let's make a new layer on top by tapping the plus, and then let's set it to clipping mask. Then for our color, let's grab this one over here, the second color in the third row. And for our brush, we need to go back to the calligraphy brushes and use the script brush. And let's create some random shapes just to add some interest to this rock. Let's create a shape like this. Just something random. It's all stylized, so you don't have to give it too much thought. Let's drag in the color. Perhaps some more of this light over here. And maybe a little light shape here. Drag in the color. It'll switch the color to the third one over here, third one in the third row. And then let's create a shape like this. Loop around, close it, and drag in the color. Once you're happy with these shapes, you can actually pinch these layers together. And then let's make another one on top. Let's tap the plus again and set this to clipping mask as well. And then for the color, we'll grab this one, the fourth color in the third row. And we'll add a little bit of this dark gray to this lower area. Loop around, close the shape, and drag in the color. And then once you're happy, you can pinch them together again. Then we'll make another layer on top. We'll tap the plus again, set this to clipping mask again, and we'll change the layer blending mode. We'll tap the N and set this to multiply, which is great for shadows, just like for the big mountains. And then for the color, we'll grab the third one in the third row. And now let's start here and make a shape like this. Go down and then to the side. Then we'll start here again. Make a shape like this, then back to the left, and then drag in the color. You can also add some cracks, make some extra lines. Just in random places. And then let's lower the opacity. I think it's a little bit dark, so let's tap the M and scroll to the left and set it to 60%. Now let's move on to our trees. They are on layer 11. By the way, if you want to save layer space, then you can just merge these two together. So for layer 11, we'll tap the plus for a new layer. We'll set this to clipping mask, and we'll set this layer blending mode to multiply again. And we will lower the opacity of the layer to 60%. And for our brush, we still need to use the script brush, but we can make it a little bit smaller. Let's set the size to 3%. Let's zoom in a little bit here. And then grab the local color of these trees. You can just tap and hold your finger on the screen to grab the color. And then let's make a pointy shape, loop around, drag in the color, and perhaps add some more pointy parts here to add a little bit of that pine tree feel here. Loop around, add some extra pointy parts. Let's do a few at the same time. We'll darken the left sides of these trees. This one as well. Close it, drag in the color, and then just add a few of these extra lines. It's very stylized. You don't have to give it a lot of thought. Then we also have this tree on here. We can tap and hold to grab the color. And then let's go over here and make these pointy shapes. Start in this corner, then to the other one. So something like this. Then let's move on to the next tree. This one over here. Let's go to the layer menu, go to layer 10, then tap the plus for a new layer. And again, we'll set it to clipping mask. We'll tap the N and set it to multiply. And again, we'll lower the opacity to 60%. Then you need to tap and hold this color to grab it. And then again, we'll make these pointy shapes. Over here. Try to vary them a little bit. So something like this. Then move on to this little tree over here. For this one, we will grab a different color. We will grab this one over here. That's the 7th color in the 2nd row. And let's make a shape like this. Loop around, close it, and drag in the color. Then finally, we need to move on to this tree over here. So we need to go to layer 9, tap the plus for a new layer, set it to clipping mask, then tap the N, set it to multiply, and lower the opacity to 60%. Then for the color, we'll grab this local color. So tap your finger on the screen, grab the color, and then again, we'll make these jagged lines. I'll make them even thicker for this tree. Make some a little bit thicker and some a little bit thinner. You can also drag in the color. You can also make some extra shapes. You know, this doesn't have to look realistic, so just try to make some of these random shapes. Just pointy parts here, we'll make some a little bit thinner. So something like this looks perfect actually. I want to add some extra color variation to these trees on the left. I want to add some light. And to do that, we'll go to the layers on which the trees are on. So in this case, layer 9, we'll tap alpha lock. Then for the brush, we will go to the airbrushing brushes, use the soft brush. And for the color, we'll grab this 10th color in the 2nd row, which is the same color as we used for the grass. And then we'll use our brush a little bit on the outside of the tree, very gently, to add some of the light on the right side of the tree, just like this. Then we'll do the same for this layer. We'll tap it, turn on alpha lock, and then we'll paint on the outside of the tree and add a little bit of light like this. Then we'll go to layer 11 here, tap it, turn on alpha lock, and add some light on this one as well. So this way we created a soft gradient on our trees. Now let's move on to our rocks. Let's scroll up. Here we have our first rocks on layer 6. Let's tap the plus for a new layer, set it to clipping mask, then tap the N and scroll up to multiply. And let's lower the opacity to 60%. Then for the brush, we will go back to the calligraphy brushes and use the script brush. And then for the color, we will use this 4th color in the 3rd row. Now let's go over these rocks and let's just make some random shapes to add some interest to these rocks. Pointy shapes. Like this, now loop around and drag in the color. You can also make a little crack here. You can actually make the brush a little bit bigger again. Let's go for 10%. Make the crack a little bit thicker. Then for this rock, I would like to use a warm color first. Let's grab this one, 3rd color in the 3rd row. And let's just add a shape like this. Loop around, close it, and drag in the color. Then switch to that 4th color in the 3rd row. And then let's also add some of that color. Color it in. just like this. Then let's make another multiply layer on top of this one. So we'll tap the plus, set this layer to clipping mask again, tap the N, scroll up to multiply, and we'll leave it at 100% opacity. And now for the color, we'll grab that warm one again, third color in the third row. I'd like to add a little bit of dark over here, a little bit of a jagged shape, loop around, close it, drag in the color, perhaps a little bit over here as well. And then for this one, let's make a shape like this, loop around, close it, and drag in the color. So these are very simple shapes. Once you're happy, you could actually just merge these layers like this. Then we'll move on to the next rocks. Layer 7, tap the plus for a new layer. For the new layer, we'll set it to clipping mask. Then we'll tap the N and set it to multiply. Then for our color, we'll grab the fourth color again in the third row. And let's first start creating a shape like this. Loop around, close it, drag in the color. And for this one as well, loop around, drag in the color. Then we have this one, shape like this, drag in the color. And I'd like to lower the opacity a little bit. It's a little bit dark, so go to the layer menu, tap the M, and let's set it to 50%. Now let's do it one more time. Let's tap the plus, set the new layer to clipping mask, tap the N, and scroll up to multiply. Then let's add another part of the shadow here. Make it even darker, loop around, close it, and drag in the color. And again, let's lower the opacity a little bit. So tap the M and set it to 50% again. Then we'll make another multiply layer. We'll tap the plus, set this to clipping mask, tap the N, and scroll up to multiply. And now for the color, let's grab this one over here, the fifth color in the third row. And let's add some warm tones over here. Perhaps a little bit of a crack here. Drag in the color over here as well. A little bit of this brownish color, perhaps a little crack over here as well. This warm color on the side, drag in the color, and perhaps a little crack. And then again, once you're happy, you can actually pinch these layers together. So you just have these rock layers. Then for layer 8, that's the rock over here. Let's tap the plus. Then let's set this layer to clipping mask. Then tap the N and scroll up to multiply. Then for the color, first we'll grab that fourth color in the third row again. And let's make a shape like this. Drag in the color and make some cracks. Just very simple. Then let's go to the layer menu, tap the M, and set it to, let's say 65%. We'll tap the plus for another multiply layer. So first, set it to clipping mask, tap the N, scroll up to multiply, and then for the color, we'll go back to that fifth color in the third row. And then let's deepen the shadow like this, drag in the color. And then once you're happy, you can pinch these together. Next, we are going to work on the grass. The grass is pretty flat now. Let's go to layer 3. Let's add some like grassy texture. We want to work on the edges. Now let's grab the grass color, which is the 10th color in the second row. And let's zoom in. And let's just go along this edge, make these wobbly shapes, some little pointy shapes, but just a little bit of a grassy edge. I can see a little bit of floating grass here. Let's grab the eraser to fix that. Back to the brush. Just some wobbly shapes for some faraway grass. Just short little strokes. just like this. We'll do the same over here along this edge, along the little road. But I'm adding some more of these strokes, not just wobbles, but also grass-like strokes. And short upward strokes in various directions. And then also over here in front of those trees. Let's make those a little bit longer. Make these lines a little bit curved and in different directions to get some playful grass. Now to create that grass texture in front of the rocks, we need to go to the rock layers. Let's first go to this one. Let's tap it and then add a layer mask. And then with black and with our same brush, we'll go in front of these rocks and add that grass texture by just masking parts of those rocks. So you'll see that grass color that is underneath that layer. So just go in front of it to make the rocks, these boulders, merge with the environment. We also have this one on this layer. Just go along the edge. There. Then let's do that for the other boulders, the other rocks. Let's go to layer 7, tap the layer and use mask. So we can move on to this one. We are closer to the viewer, so let's make these grass leaves a little bit bigger. Again, just random strokes, random directions, different lengths. Something like this. And then finally for these two rocks, you don't have to go along the entire lower edge. You can leave some parts a bit more crisp, like this. Then for our sign, let's go to layer 12. We need a layer mask there as well. So tap it, turn on the mask, and then let's go over here and add some grass here as well. All right, now I would like to add some stylized flowers to our grassy field. Let's go to our grass layer, layer 3, and tap the plus for a new layer. And on a layer, we will use this color over here, the 8 color in the 3rd row, to create some little flowers. And these flowers are just little blobs. These aren't super detailed flowers, just some light blobs on the grass that give the suggestion of little flowers. So super simple. Just a few clusters of these blobs. And then we'll go back to the grass layer, layer 3. We'll tap the plus for a new layer. And we'll set this layer to clipping mask so that whatever we do, it'll only show up on our grass layer. And then we'll set the layer blending mode to multiply. And for the color, we will grab this color over here, the 10th color in the 3rd row. And we are going to add some shadow to our grass. First, let's go over here and make a line like this. And then go up and then drag in the color. And then what we'll do is add that grassy texture, a grassy edge here as well. So again, go along that edge and add those grassy leaves. Over here as well, we'll make them a little bit longer. And then let's also go along this edge of our little road and add some of that grass texture there as well. So just these upward strokes along the entire length of that edge of the path. And just try to vary the lengths and make them a little bit smaller as you move away from the viewer. You can also add some random little grassy strokes on the field. And then to make it a bit more soft, a bit more muted, tone it down a little bit, we'll add a layer mask here. So tap the layer, then add a mask. And then for the brush, go back to the airbrushing brushes and use the soft brush. And then with black, we'll go over this area, tone it down a little bit here as well, just slightly. Then we'll make a new layer on top of this one. We'll tap the plus, then set it to clipping mask as well. Then tap the end, set this layer blending mode to multiply, and lower the opacity to 40%. Then again, we'll use that calligraphy brush, the script brush, and we'll make another area of grass here. We'll just go over here, add some grassy leaves. They are a little bit longer because they are closer to the viewer. And it'll add some extra depth to this area. Along the entire area here. Then let's also add a few of these grassy leaves here, and we'll add a tiny little shadow underneath these flowers. So for those flowers, just go along the lower left area and add a slight little edge there. This one as well. For all of the flowers, just a little edge. And then you can add just a few more of these grassy strokes to add a bit more interest to your grassy field. Now let's continue. We are almost nearing completion. We need to work on our path and on our sign, and we will add some clouds. So we're almost there. Let's work on our little path. Here on layer 2, we have our path, and we will create a layer on top of it by tapping the plus. Let's just make sure we won't go outside of the path by setting this layer to clipping mask. And then for our color, let's grab this one over here, second color in the third row. And we still have that script brush, and let's just add a few of these shapes. That will be like stones here on the path. So just some shapes like this. You can drag in the color. some over here. Do make sure that you close the shapes before you drag in the color. Then we'll go to the layer, we'll tap it, turn on alpha lock so we won't be able to go outside of the shape. Then we'll grab the soft brush under airbrushing. You see, we're doing pretty much everything with just 2 brushes. It's kind of crazy. Let's grab this color, first color in the 3rd row. And let's gently go over this lower area to create a bit of a gradient over all these rocks. Then we'll go back to the calligraphy brushes, the script brush. And then for the color, we'll grab this one, 10th color in the 1st row. And we are going to use it to create a little edge. Just on the underside. Here we'll create a little line like this to separate these two. So this will create some depth here. It'll give it that thickness. So very thin along all of these parts. Then for these over here, maybe a little crack here. So now we have some of these random rocks. Let's make a new layer on top of this one by tapping the plus, set this to clipping mask, and then set the layer blending mode for this to multiply. Then for the color, let's grab this color over here, 3rd color in the 3rd row, and for the brush, we will grab the soft brush under airbrushing again. And then let's go over the lower area like this to add a little bit of shadow there. Now let's continue. Let's work on our sign here. Let's zoom in a little bit so we can clearly see it. Let's first add some shadow to those signs. Let's go to the top to layer 13. Let's tap the plus for a new layer on top. Tap this layer, set it to clipping mask, and then set the layer blending mode to multiply. Now, of course, for the shadow parts, you could just pick a darker color and create those shadows, but I have a limited space for the color palette, so there wasn't any room for a darker color which we could use for the shadow parts. So using multiply is actually pretty handy. Now for the color, we'll use that 10th color in the 3rd row, which is already pretty dark, but once we use it on here, it'll be even darker. But for the brush, we will use the calligraphy brush again. So that's the script brush. And then, for instance, we'll go over this area and make a dark part like this. Then we'll grab the eraser, which should already be set to script, and then erase this part. Then back to the brush, we'll do the same over here. Make an edge like this, then grab the eraser and create a diagonal part here. Back to the brush. Let's add a little dark underside for this one. And for this one as well, just slightly. And then let's create a little bit of wooden texture. We'll just create these little lines. Try to make them nice and thin. Use very little pressure. If you are having trouble with that, then just make your brush a little bit smaller. For this one as well. And they can be a little bit wobbly, of course. They don't have to be perfect, these lines. Over here as well. It gives a nice suggestion of wooden texture. Then we'll switch to another layer. We'll make another layer underneath this one. So first tap layer 13, then tap the plus, then tap the N. And this time we'll set the layer blending mode to screen, which is great to add light. And we'll grab the local color of the sign, so just tap and hold. And then let's go over this top area. And then again, grab the eraser to erase this little part. Grab the brush again. We need to light the top part of this one. And over here as well. And again, we can add some of these lines for that wooden texture. Just a few extra lines. Not too many. Just a few. Then let's move on to that pole, which is on this layer. First, let's tap the plus for a new layer. By the way, if you're happy with those signs, you can merge those layers to save some layer space. And for this layer, set it to clipping mask, then tap the N, then scroll up to multiply. And then for the color, let's grab this one over here. Third color in the first row. And let's go over the side. Let's go add a little bit of shadow here. Add a shadow side on the left side. And some of these lines to again create that idea, that suggestion of wooden texture. Just a few of these lines and a little shadow underneath these signs. Then let's also create a screen layer. Let's tap the plus, set this layer to clipping mask, then tap the N and scroll down to screen. And then let's grab that color from our signs again, this one. Go over the top here. And then some light on the edge and a few lines. Little light here and over here. And then to make that little pole match with the sign, we can change the color of that pole, because now first I used different colors so you could see the difference between the signs and the pole, but now we don't need that anymore. So we can grab that 9th color in the 3rd row and drag it onto our pole. So that's on layer 12, just drag it onto the shape, and now it looks just like those signs. Now on those signs, you could add some text. Do that on top of all the other layers, tap the plus. Now what I like to do is use one of the brushes from my treasure chest brush pack. If you don't already have it, then go to freefromflow.com to get it for free. It has more than 70 brushes in there. So I'll go to the treasure chest brush pack and use the fine liner brush, which has a nice little texture. And then for the color, you know what, let's grab that local color here, which we have created by using that multiply layer. So just tap and hold your finger so we get a nice dark color. And then we can add text here. Now I have the opacity of the brush at 100% and I'll set the size to 6%. And I'll just write down fun. And you can make it a little bit scratchy, like someone wrote this with a knife. So a little bit of a scratchy text. I think that adds some nice character here. Now, if you're not entirely happy with the placement, then you can just go to the Move and Transform tool, of course. Move your text around, tap the arrow again, and you can add multiple text, or perhaps you can add a little icon like a little sun. Again, a little bit scratchy. And what should we put here? Maybe that way is joy. Joy and fun. Bit of a rounded shape. And then a scratchy Y. And to make it look like this is really carved, you can go to the layer, set it to alpha lock so we won't be able to paint outside of the shape. And then for the color, we can grab this one over here, second color in the 3rd row. And we're going to add little highlights on the left sides and the undersides because that's where the light would be hitting. So just small, thin edges. Right along the undersides and the left side. Over here as well. And for our little sun. But of course you can write whatever you like on these signs and personalize your work. There. You see, now it looks like this is really carved into that wood. And finally, we need some clouds for our scene. Let's go to a layer right at the bottom underneath that rocky layer. So let's go to this layer, layer 19, which is one of, well, it's the last layer we made on top of our mountains. Let's tap the plus, and on this layer, we will use the script brush again. So let's go back to the calligraphy brushes and use the script brush. Then for the color, we'll use this one over here. That's the 10th color in the first row. And we are going to make some fluffy cloud shapes. Let's start here and make a wavy shape like this. Go along the mountain like this. Let's zoom in. Just go right along that mountain, drag in the color. And perhaps some more over here. Random shape. And then I also want a cloud that moves in between those mountains. Let's start here. Make a fluffy cloud shape. Then that underside. Then over here, go along that mountain. And then drag in the color. Another one over here, bit smaller one. Drag in the color. And a big cloud over here. And it has a long shape here. Loop around and drag in the color. Now I do feel like maybe we can make this one a little bit smaller on the underside. So let's grab the eraser and let's just remove a little part of that underside. Now it can be quite some trouble to erase everything by hand. Here you could also go to the selection tool, the S shape ribbon, set it to freehand, and then move right in between, which is a nice exercise. To move in between, you might not get everything, but then close the selection around it, and then swipe with 3 fingers or go to the layer, tap it, and use clear. And then you can just grab the eraser again and get those final little thingies. Tidy things up a little bit. And there you have it. Now let's add a little bit of color variation to our clouds. Let's make a layer on top of this, tap the plus, set it to clipping mask so our color will only show up on those clouds. And then for the color, we'll grab this one over here, 9th color in the first row. And let's, for instance, go over here and add a little bit of that bluish to the underside. Drag in the color, a little bit over here as well. Loop around, close it, drag in the color. I want to make this one entirely blue, so I'll loop around and drag in the color. Then over here, loop around, close it, drag in the color. And over here, loop around, close the shape, drag in the color. And then to soften it a little bit, we can use a layer mask again. So tap that layer, tap mask, then grab the soft brush under airbrushing. And while it's set to black, go over some of these areas to soften the transition a little bit. Do that over here as well. Just gently, not too much. Now for a final touch, there is one color that we haven't used yet in the color palette, and we are going to use it on the sky layer. That's right here at the bottom. And the color is this second color in the first row, and it's very subtle, but I want to use the soft brush to add a little bit of that light touch to that upper right corner. You might not even be able to see it on camera, but let's just add a little bit of light there. And that's it. You have made it to the end. And you have created this lovely mountain scene. You should really be proud of yourself. Now that you have finished following this tutorial, you might want to turn it into a streak. Why not follow this tutorial next? Now don't forget to share your work. I would love to see it, and I would love to see you next time for the next tutorial. Thank you for watching.